We all know Coca-Cola, right? It's literally a global symbol of joy, refreshment, success. But what you probably don't know is the story of the guy who invented it. And let me tell you, it's anything but joyful. It's a story of war, of addiction, and just sheer desperation that ends not with a massive fortune, but with one of the most tragic ironies you'll ever hear.
So that's what we're diving into, this incredible paradox, how the personal tragedy of one man, a man most of us have never even heard of, somehow gave birth to the world's most famous brand.
So on one hand, you've got the man himself, John Stith Pemberton. And on the other, you have a monument celebrating his amazing creation. But the journey that connects these two pictures, it is not the triumphant success story you're imagining.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How on earth did a product that was born from one man's absolute agony become a global symbol for pure happiness?
You see, the story of Coke doesn't start with some flash of genius in a chemistry lab. Nope, it begins on a Civil War battlefield with a moment of shocking violence.
So this guy, John Pemberton, he was a really gifted chemist and a high-ranking officer in the Confederate Army. He had a pretty promising life ahead of him. But in April 1865, during one of the very last battles of the Civil War, a single event changed everything. He was badly wounded, and to manage the awful chronic pain, his doctors prescribed morphine. Well, you can probably guess what happened next. He quickly got hooked. And that addiction, it didn't just take over the rest of his life and drain all his money. It's the very thing that pushed him to create his world-famous formula.
And this is a really important point. Pemberton's experiments weren't about trying to get rich or famous by creating some popular new drink. He was a man completely trapped by addiction, and he was desperately using his chemistry skills to try and invent his own cure.
After a bunch of different attempts, he finally landed on this concoction he called Pemberton's French Wine Coca. It was basically a medicinal nerve tonic. He mixed wine with extracts from the coca leaf and kola nut, and the whole idea was to create a painkiller that wasn't morphine.
He marketed it as a cure for all kinds of common problems back then. He especially aimed it at war veterans suffering from addiction and what was then called nervous prostration in women.
So, Pemberton's medicine is starting to get a little bit of buzz. But it's about to be transformed into a global phenomenon, all thanks to a new law and a complete accident.
Right when his coca wine was starting to gain some real traction, bam, Atlanta passes these temperance laws, banning the sale of alcohol. Suddenly, his most successful product was illegal. He had no choice but to go back to the drawing board and invent a non-alcoholic version.
I mean, when you lay it all out, the chain of events is just unbelievable. A war wound sparks an addiction. That addiction fuels the search for a cure. A legal ban forces a change in the formula. And then, by complete accident, someone mixes that new syrup with carbonated water. Just like that, Coca-Cola was born. Now, it was actually his partner, Frank Robinson, who saw the real commercial potential here. He's the one who came up with that iconic name and the famous script. And together, they totally pivoted the marketing. This wasn't a nerve tonic anymore. Oh no. This was a delicious and refreshing fountain drink.
But this is where the story takes its most tragic turn. Just as his invention was right on the verge of greatness, Pemberton's own life was completely collapsing.
He was now suffering from stomach cancer, he was basically broke, and his morphine addiction was more severe and more expensive than ever. He was absolutely desperate.
And the crazy thing is, he knew what he had created. He even predicted it could one day be a national drink. He desperately wanted to keep his share of the company for his son, Charles, but his son just wanted the quick cash, and Pemberton was simply too sick and too desperate to hold on. In 1888, right before he died, Pemberton and his son sold off the very last of their rights to the Coca-Cola formula. The price for what would become one of the most valuable brands in human history was a mere $300.
And this is the man who bought it, Asa Griggs Candler. A fellow pharmacist in Atlanta, Candler wasn't just buying a recipe, he was buying potential. With some really aggressive marketing and a sharp business mind, he was the one who would transform Pemberton's little fountain drink into the multi-billion-dollar empire its creator would never even get a glimpse of.
The crushing irony of Pemberton's life is really sealed in his final days, creating this unbelievable contrast between his quiet, painful death and the explosive legacy he left behind.
John Pemberton died of stomach cancer just months after selling his creation, still poor and in the grips of his addiction. And in a final heartbreaking chapter, the very addiction he fought so hard to cure also claimed his son Charles, who died just 6 years later.
And this right here is the ultimate contrast of his legacy.
His final resting place is a simple, modest grave in Columbus, Georgia, while his hometown celebrates the global icon he created but never, ever truly benefited from.
So what's the takeaway here? Well, the next time you open a bottle of Coke, maybe just remember that you're holding a piece of a deeply complex and human story. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the world's most joyful inventions are born from the most painful circumstances.